All right, so introduce yourself.
I'm Stephen Knight. I'm the writer and director of Locke.
All right, so where did you come up with the name Locke?
It's partly that Locke sounds like the character, which is quite hard and firm and locked in, and partly that there's a philosopher called John Locke who was very rational and believed in many things that the character Ivan Locke believes in. So the name worked in a couple of different ways,
All right. You make one mistake and the whole world comes crashing down around you. Talk to me about that line.
really. What I wanted to do was to make a film about an ordinary person and not. I think a lot of times filmmakers feel they only have permission to make a story if there are explosions and murders and kidnappings and hostages, whereas I think the drama in most people's lives is things that happen. They make a mistake. They're not bad people. They're not good people. They're just people. And Ivan Locke is. I wanted him to be the most ordinary person. He's married. He's got two kids. He works in construction. He works with concrete, which is the least glamorous material. But he made a mistake, and as a consequence of that mistake and his decision to deal with it in a particular way, his whole life unravels. And it's a study of an ordinary tragedy, really, that will never make the papers or the local news, but for the people involved, it's the end of the world.
He's essentially a decent man. So how does he come up against such tragedy?
I think everyone in their so-called ordinary lives, either as a consequence of something they do or something that happens to them, experience these huge emotions and experience these tragedies. People get sick, bereavement, also the highs of things, the fantastic highs of birth and love, and all of those things happen in our lives, not in a genre, not as a result of dramatic events. It's just how we get on with our lives. And Ivan has to deal with something that happens in his life, and he could tell a lie. A simple lie would sort of get him out of trouble. But on this night, on this journey, he decides to go to the destination where he'll be able to sort things out.
Which leads me to, the mistake that he made was indecent and normally would have me completely on the other side of him. And I somehow found myself rooting for him. I just called him a decent human being. How did you do that? How did you get us to root for some guy who does this awful, awful thing? And I'm just like, doggone it, I want him to win.
I think, I hope that people recognise their own flaws and fallibility in what they see on the screen, because we're none of us perfect. And I think we all know that loneliness and being away from home and all of those things can lead to certain decisions being made. And Ivan at least tries to clean up the mess. Ivan at least tries to do what his father didn't do in the story. And I think that makes us, well, I think it makes people say to themselves, would I do that? Would I actually follow this through or not? Or would I take the easy way out?
I think there's too much taking the easy way out these days. Um, so many different emotions from one person in essentially one setting, playing against voices on the other end of the phone. How did you do that? Talk to me about the filmmaking.
Well, there's always a practical and logical reason not to do the obvious thing in making films. But in this case, I wanted to do it in the most obvious way. So we got a car which we put onto a low loader, and Tom was in it in the driving seat. We put 3 cameras inside the car. We then, the other cast of actors who were some of the best actors in Britain who agreed to take part in this project, were in a hotel conference room. We opened a phone line to the car, so the phone calls are all real. I was on the back of the low loader. I would cue the conference room, so the first actor would come up and make the first call. I would only say action once because we shot the whole film beginning to end all in one take each time. So in the end we had 16 movies because we tried to shoot it twice a night for 8 nights.
Were all the actors sitting together in the same conference room?
With red wine and biscuits.
Oh my gosh.
And that was their only sort of compensation. And you know, it was tough, but it was because it's a short shoot, people are, I think, prepared to put up with stuff, and they put in such great performances. So that the calls are happening for real, and Tom can calibrate his performance because he's going through it for real in that vehicle.
Did you ever consider showing the other actors?
No, I think once you have made a decision, like Ivan, once you've made a decision, you have to stick with it. And I think you can't really cheat on that, and you can't even coming out of the car sometimes. In an original edit, we showed the car from outside quite a lot, and people didn't like it. They wanted to stay with it. They wanted to know what happens next, and it was sort of people were impatient to find out what the next revelation is going to be.
Where did the idea for the story come from?
Well, I just made a conventional film, and I'd noticed how great we tested the cameras, and I noticed how great nighttime cities looked from a moving vehicle. And when we watched it on a big screen, I just thought it was beautiful, and thought maybe that could be a theatre. You put an actor into there and shoot a play, which is what we did really. And then I was also keen about this point of how films can be about ordinary people making ordinary decisions. You know, not everyone is Jason Bourne, and we can just be ordinary, and we can forgive each other and forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we make when we see that really it's not a bad person behind that wheel.
What was the budget?
Very small.
You're not gonna say?
Below 2 million.
Okay. Consider brilliant. I mean, genius. I'm sorry. Brilliant. Brilliant. How did you just happen to set up the lunch with Tom Hardy the next day after you met with Shoebox?
No, I was meeting Tom about something else, and the meeting was set to be about another project. And Tom and his manager wanted me to write something, and I said, well, I also would love you to be in something that I've been thinking about. And at that point, it was just a concept, and Tom loves theatre, so he bought into the idea, and then I went away and wrote it, and he liked that, and so we were shooting it within about 4 months.
Wow.
I know.
2 week shoot. How did you approach it, especially with 16 movies?
Just basically with the thought that all happy accidents are welcome. We're happy, shoot whatever happens and use it and try and be creative about what we get. For example, because we were on a low loader, the BMW didn't have very low petrol. We didn't bother to fill it up because we weren't driving it until the last 2 days. And as a result of that, the car gives you this signal every now and again that you're low on petrol. It makes this sort of zing noise. And every time it happened, Tom would bang the dashboard out of frustration. But instead of losing that, we kept it, and instead of the zing noise, we had, you have a call waiting. And so it looks like he's responding to the increasing pressure of more calls coming in. So, you know, we tried within the limited space to, whatever came along, use it. And we were very fortunate.
And everything's fixed in post.
We didn't really have much post to fix it in, so we sort of tried to fix it by accepting whatever happened.
Okay, so how do you post 16 films? How do you find the story in 16?
Well, that was to begin with. We thought this is, because if you think about it, there's probably 10 billion films there, according to the permutations between 3 cameras, 16 movies. But then we discovered quite quickly that some nights, some sequences, some hours were all perfect. That it just got into the groove. Something happened. Everyone was just right. Tom was right. It looked right. The lights were good. And we kept finding ourselves going back to the same moments, the same evenings. So that a lot of the stuff that we'd done was really preparation.
Can you detach yourself from it? And if so, have you seen it in a detached manner, and what did you feel?
The film itself?
Yes.
I've seen it sort of in a detached manner because of the way other people watch it. Because they don't know what, you know, where the cameras are and all of that stuff. And just talking to ordinary people, the great thing is that people who I suspect were dragged to the cinema, who didn't want to go, a lot of middle-aged men, a lot of men who, you know, who've lived lives, who, when the lights go up, are the ones that have tears in their eyes, and the conversations are, that was close to home. That's the journey my dad didn't make. It's the journey I should have made. So I'm really pleased that it's striking a chord. Not just, I mean, from Vienna, Venice, Paris, London, Salt Lake City, especially Salt Lake City. Fantastic responses.
All right, final question. Um, he starts with everything, he ends with nothing. Does he get them back?
Maybe.